So now to our final speaker, Dr. Monica Leverton. Monica is a research fellow in the NIHR Policy Research Unit at Health and Social Care Workforce at King's College London. That's quite a mouthful. Her work focuses on ageing, dementia and the social care workforce, including Dementia Champions in Home Care project, which she led as principal investigator. And her talk is going to be about the Dementia Champions study. Over to you, Monica.
Yeah, not a catchy title, but thank you for the introduction. So I'll move straight into the slides. So the reason for embarking on this project in the first place was the knowledge that there's a growing number of people living with dementia that's ever increasing, and also that most people living with dementia do prefer to stay living in their own homes. And often that's made possible with the support from family carers as well as the paid home care workforce. So that's the workforce I'm focusing on today. So we know that with that workforce, there are key challenges. So low pay, minimal support and training, particularly around dementia, as well as home care workers citing few opportunities to progress and develop in their careers as reasons for leaving the sector. So we know that with high staff turnover comes knock-on effects for people affected by dementia, including a lack of continuity of care and also people feeling that their needs are not well understood. So learning from kind of wider literature, especially internationally, we wanted to see if the role of Dementia Champions could help to tackle some of the challenges facing this sector, particularly around that lack of opportunity for career progression. So the aim of this project was to define, refine, and evolve the role of Dementia Champions in the home care sector. Next slide, please. So just to briefly contextualize what we did in the interest of time. So the first two phases were really about learning from the Dementia Champion role across health and social care, although we rarely found examples of this within home care. The third and fourth phase were taking what we'd learned from health and social care and really narrowing that down to the home care sector. And all of this was informed by a theory of change framework. So essentially that allowed us to ask the question of what works for who, in what settings and how. Next slide, please. So the key thing that I wanted to focus on today as part of the methodology was the co-production workshop, which was the pivotal point for taking our knowledge of Dementia Champions from across health and social care broadly and really pinpointing how it could be evolved and work for the intricacies of the home care sector. So in this workshop, we had 12 members join us. So that included people living with dementia, family carers, and people working in home care, whether that was home care workers directly, managers, as well as people involved in the planning and commissioning of home care. Because it was such a varied group, we also included a science illustrator to make the workshop as inclusive and accessible as possible. So as well as presenting the information we had as a research team through interactive games and activities, the illustrator was sat in the room live scribing the discussion, and that was projected in real time on the screen so that everyone in the room could follow along as the discussion was evolving. And then we also had regular breaks so people could go up to the screen and make changes where they felt they either hadn't spoken up or they maybe had been misunderstood. So from this, we produced a visual model of what a dementia champion in home care could look like. And then we took this to a final set of interviews that we conducted within the home care sector, particularly with organisations that didn't have dementia champions in their workforce. And we spoke to managers, care workers, as well as other people involved in that sector. Next slide, please. So just to move straight into the findings then. So this is our theory of change framework specific to the home care sector for dementia champions. So firstly, we looked at the activities and the inputs, the roles and responsibilities of a dementia champion. I won't go through all of it just because of time, but largely it was felt that the dementia champion role could really benefit the sector by having that dedicated person to review and update care plans for people living with dementia, as we know that their needs progress more rapidly than other people's, and everybody has a review at the same point within home care, which tends to be annually, which was not seen as enough to reflect the needs of people living with dementia. Also to point out something that's quite different from what we learned across home care, health care, was that dementia champions were not to be seen as trainers. While they had a lot of should have a lot of training opportunities of their own, being a trainer is a very specific skill set, and that isn't something that should be placed on the shoulders of home care workers on top of their other responsibilities. The short-term mechanisms of action applied to how to implement Dementia Champions, so actually how to get care staff into the Dementia Champion role. And partly this was about making sure that the role opportunity was known about and advertised to everybody within the organisation, rather than managers sort of cherry picking and voluntelling was the quote that we were given, to make sure that it was actually people who were motivated and interested in taking on this kind of enhanced role and responsibility. Also, getting the right person in place involved passion, someone who was passionate, but passion isn't everything. There were also key skills that are needed of a dementia champion, like the ability and confidence to share knowledge with others, to be a diplomatic and effective communicator was also part of that. The medium-term mechanisms then were about embedding dementia champions, so how they worked within home care. And this was really about making sure dementia champions had protected time. So seeing the role as its own role with its own set of tasks, rather than an addition to care work as usual. And then the long-term mechanisms were the trickiest to manage. So this was about how to sustain the role and maintain staff in those dementia champion roles. And pay was the most contentious issue here. So whether increased pay is needed to reflect the value of the role. But also we actually heard that there are things that are potentially more important than pay for care workers, such as ongoing feedback and recognition. Next slide, please. So just to kind of highlight some key practical implications, and this is probably the question we've been asked the most during the study by home care providers: how do we get dementia champions into our service or into our workforce? So we asked the home care workers that we spoke to whether or not they'd want to become a dementia champion. And firstly, I'll present some of the reasons why people said that they wouldn't want to become a dementia champion. And largely that involved just feeling overwhelmed at the idea of taking on more responsibility, whether that was because of having too high workloads already, or maybe working part-time and not feeling that they had enough time to fulfill the requirements. People also felt content in their current role and didn't have that drive to develop in their career, and people just feeling it isn't the right time for them. So someone giving a quote there about being near retirement and being happy as they are. Then in the next box is about the facilitators. So reasons people would want to become a dementia champion and how they could be supported. And that largely fell on the shoulders of managers to support people who were passionate and knowledgeable about good dementia care, but weren't necessarily those who kind of shouted the loudest. So it was about providing encouragement, even in junior staff, to know that there were opportunities to develop in their career to give people something to aspire to. And then just to also kind of pick up the idea about visibility and role clarity, so that people had confidence to give advice to others and to be seen to have this higher level of responsibility. So even just having the Dementia Champion title felt enough for people. Next slide, please. So that's all I have time to present in terms of information, but I just thought I'd give this last slide as an idea of the range of outputs that we've produced from this project. So if you scan the QR code there, and it will be on the final slide as well, you can access all of these resources for free and use them where helpful. So we just have a summarizing infographic, a 4-minute animation that we produced with a home care provider who also narrated that animation. And then this is our visual illustration of what a Dementia Champions in home care should look like. So the very final slide is just my contact information and another opportunity to scan the QR code if you haven't been able to yet. So thank you.